Welcome to this MOOC on Education for Sustainable Development and Global Change. The aim of this first part is to present the context of education for sustainable development in higher education. Our presentation will be divided into three parts. We'll look at the two underlying trends that have contributed to the development of the ESD in higher education. First, society's mobilization in favor of the climate. Second, by the institutional demands for climate education. Finally, represent the example of France. First of all, it should be remembered that the spotlight on climate issues is a dynamic driven by civil society and researchers. This mobilization emerged in the 70s in all Western countries, following environmentalist advocacy and researcher. Rachel Carson, a biologist, published in 1962 Silent Spring. The book warned about the threat on biodiversity caused by pesticides, but also raised questions about the relationship between man and his environment. This was followed by the creation of major non-governmental organizations, such as Greenpeace in 1971 and Friends of the Earth in 1969. Two institutional reports also helped to influence policy. Meadows' report in 1972 and the Brundtland report in 1987. An institutional framework emerged through major conferences, such as Rio Conference in 1992, Kyoto Conference in 1997, and Paris Conference in 2015. Since 2018, mobilization seems to have changed. The scale of now global with the major protests launched by Greta Thunberg. Major climate marches have been organized to put pressure on policymakers accused to not act. These demonstrations were massive, but mainly concerned Western countries, with peak mobilization in major cities such as Paris, with 50,000 demonstrators on March 16, 2019. Against this backdrop and in response to this growing pressure, a European framework for education has recently been put in place, and we shall see in the second part. In June 2022, the European Union defined a European framework of competencies for sustainable development, entitled Green Comp. It identifies a set of sustainability competencies to be integrated into education programs to help learners develop knowledge, skills, and attitude that promotes way of thinking, planning, and active with empathy, responsibility, and concern for our planet and public health. The framework defines 4 groups of sustainable skills that should be acquired by learners of all ages. Each competency has 3 subsections. Let's focus now on the example of France to better understand how this movement impacts higher education. Change is underway, but is slow and requires changes to progress, particularly in higher education. In France, institutional demands have become more pressing since 2009, with the Green Plan. All universities must implement sustainable development and use the CDRS framework. Giselle Abadi Report 2020 on Teaching the Ecological Transition in Higher Education calls for acceleration of training by encouraging the reorganization of initial training courses and continuing education offerings. The research programming law has introduced the public service of higher education, with the mission of contributing the awareness and training in the challenges of ecological transition and sustainable development. Recent surveys show that young people have knowledge about environmental issues. Nevertheless, they are aware of these issues, the level of analysis of climate phenomena and the capacity of abstraction to understand environmental issues remain low. So how can we develop sustainable development education in higher education? This concludes the first part of Module 1, and we thank you for listening. We invite you to follow the next video.